Hi there, it's Susan, and it's Tuesday afternoon, and I'm on my way to my 1 year special annual checkup at the bariatric hospital that we have to do. We have to get blood work and all that stuff to make sure you're still functioning properly. So that's where I'm going. It's about a 40-minute drive. So anyway, I thought I'd come to you and tell you, like, I think I went to bed at 4:30 in the morning doing a video and editing a really good, well, I thought it was a good video, and I had to redo it twice, and then at the end something happened to my phone and it was gone. I couldn't retrieve anything. I was mad. I could barely go to sleep. But anyway, I thought I'd do it all over again. So what I was talking to you about was my life. A lot of people go on YouTube and, watch you for years and really don't know you that well, other than what your favorites are. So I thought I would give you a little bit of my history of my life. Okay, so I live in Canada, Ontario, as you probably know by now, and I love going to the States. I want to live in Florida, and gotta go get a coffee. And okay, so I'm 60 years old. I'm an only child, and I'm not spoiled, like some of my friends like to say. I wasn't spoiled at all when I was a little kid. A bit more now, maybe, but not then. I was just your average. But I went on a lot of trips. My dad worked across Canada, and he was like a fine instrument technician for the government. So he traveled all over Canada, and of course they put me in the car and I went along with them. I didn't really like it that much, but I went to school in all different provinces. Every year it wasn't easy, taking me out of school and putting me in every province. I think about 5 different schools all along the way, and they had different learning techniques than I was used to, so it wasn't easy, but I managed. And okay, so that's about my parents traveling. I've also been to Florida like a lot. I think I've been to Disney World for about 42 times, and California once or twice, the Disneyland. And I've been mostly across the States. And then I've been to Europe when I was a little girl, and I was 4 years old. Of course, I have a few memories because I have pictures. And I went to Belgium and Germany. And that's about it for there. But then when I was 10, we went to Vancouver again. And from there, we went to Hawaii. So that was, I still have good memories of Hawaii. That was a good trip. I have lots of pictures of me and my muumuu, me and my mother in matching muumuus. That was a treat. So, yeah, so I've always wanted to go back to Hawaii, but I don't think I could handle the plane ride. Ugh. Anyway, so like I said, I'm an only child. And the most devastating thing, I think I'll start with, not that it's so exciting to listen to, the most devastating things in my life, I think, were, not in this order, my divorce. And then, of course, the worst thing that ever happened was when my father had a stroke. That was a bad time. But he survived it for a few more years, like 5 more years. Not sure if he was the happiest he could have been, but he survived with my mother's good care and love. Okay, so, like I said, that was the worst time in everybody's life in our family. But we got through it, and I've been busy. Taking my mother back and forth, going back and forth to help my mother in Kelowna, BC, where they retired. And so I go there a couple of times a year. And she's 91. My dad was about 85, I think, when he had the stroke, right after his 85th birthday. So enough of that gloom and doom, and we'll go on with my life. And okay, here we go. I was 15 and a half years old, and I met a man from South America. Well, he was a guy then, not a man. And sort of a blind date. And I was head over heels. And at around 18 and a half, we got married. Of course, my mother was not happy with that at all because I was far too young. And she grew to accept what I wanted, and I wasn't going to listen to her anyway. So we got married, and yeah, I don't have a lot of regrets, even though we left in we had a bad ending at the end. But it's funny, when you're young, you don't think you're ever going to get divorced. You think you're going to grow old together. Well, that didn't happen, but that's okay. Things change, life changes. There's always a reason, they say, for things to happen. But we were married 22 years, and we had 3 lovely, wonderful children. And my oldest is 38, and she's married with a little boy, 4.5-year-old Logan, cutest baby. World. And that's what I tell them every day. He's going to be so conceited. Every grandmother tells their kids that, right? Then I have a son that's turning 35, Andre. And then I have another son that's 33, and his name is Adam. So they kept me busy when they were young, sometimes still do. And when I was about, let me think, I think I was about 18. Okay, I was 15 years old when I started working, like bus girl or whatever it was. And then I started waitressing after school and weekends. And then at about 18 and a half, I took a course in cosmetology and I got my certificate, and I became a cosmetician. So I worked for a company called Carol Baker's Visage here. Canada, which was a pretty nice company, and it's still around after so long. I walk by it all the time, and I think, hey, I used to work here. Young girls, they're probably looking at me going, what? Anyway, so I worked there for about 3 years, and I really liked it. I loved going to work. It was my passion. And I met a lot of crazy, nutty people, but it was fun because it was downtown at Yorkville. And so then I decided, I was around 22, and I decided, I think I want a baby. I remember that day I was watching Johnny Carson, and Prince came out for the first time. And I go, oh my gosh, who's that? He got on stage with a purple bikini and his guitar, and I think some ruffles around his wrists, like he always had. And he did his performance, and I thought he was crazy. And look where he got to. Look where he went. Of course, he's not around anymore, poor guy. I always liked him, even though he was eccentric. I thought he was crazy and cuckoo, but he had good songs. So after that, after I had my first baby, 3 years later I had another one, and then 2 years after that I had another one. So then I started thinking, what can I do in the house, while I'm watching my kids? So my husband at the time rebuilt our basement and made it into a daycare center, which was one of the best daycare centers I think I saw at that time. In the house. And so I did that for a long time, I think over about 20 years. And I did little jobs here and there on the side. And the first one I remember doing was flower arranging. I took a course in flower arranging, and I always liked doing that. And then, what else did I do? Oh, right, and then I did gift baskets. Oh gosh, that was a hard one to start. I had a talent for it. Everybody told me to do it. And I remember I started out at flea markets, and oh, that was horrible. I didn't like that at all. My business wasn't the right place for that. But anyway, so I contacted a few real estate agents, and I got a few real estate agents. So I did their gift baskets for their clientele, like as a thank you. And that turned out pretty good for about a year and a half, I think. I forgot to mention that when I did the gift baskets, I did them for a friend of mine that was a musician, and I did a lot of gift baskets for him for Columbia Records. And yeah, so it was fun. And then after that, I think the recession hit, and then they weren't giving out too much anymore, the real estate agents. So I stopped doing that, and I thought of a new idea, which was doing kids, little girls' birthday parties, and I called it Fairies and Friends. And I did it in my home. I redid my basement. Into a fairy garden, and it turned out beautiful. I remember I had a swing with flowers all around it where the little girls could sit, and I would take it of them and they would take it home. They had a tea party, they did crafts, they had a sing-song, treasure hunt, and their makeup done. And of course they were dressed as fairies. And me and my daughter, we ran the show, and we had to dress up like fairies, of course. Her name was Fern and mine was Ivy, or the other way around, I can't remember. And the kids loved it. And I remember close to the end of it, I had to give it up because my boys were getting older and they were living in the same bedroom, and it was too tight for them. So I had to make a bedroom downstairs, and so I had to get rid of my fairy garden. So what I thought of doing is taking all my supplies and going to their home to do it. And you know what? That just didn't turn out the same way. It didn't have the ambience anymore. They still liked it. I did about 5 parties that way. And then it was getting too much for me. I was doing daycare through the week and then that on the weekends. I mean, I was younger, but it was still hard for me and my kids. It was too much going on. So I stopped. And then, of course, the piece de resistance is I helped one of the parents bring all the gifts into the car. And it was a windy day, and my dress was a longer dress, and it blew right over my head, and I got tangled in it because I had wings on, and I thought, this is too much for me. I get too old for this. So I just did my daycare, and I was okay with that. And then one day I got this great idea because I did when my daughter got married. I decided I was watching YouTube videos about candy buffets. And I thought, what is this? And it was mostly just done in the U.S., and they had great ideas. So I copied it, and I did a really nice candy buffet for my daughter. I thought it was really nice. Everybody told me it was nice. And then the owner of the hall said, do you do this as a living? And I went, no. She goes, too bad, because you should, and I could give you some business. So I thought of it, and I went, this is a great idea. So I did candy buffets, and it was called The Occasional Candy. It's still around. My businesses are all registered, so I'm still able to continue. And big shows, people appreciated it more. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, I can do it myself. And yeah, they can. I did. But you've got to have a flair for it, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of time, and people don't realize that. A lot of brides think, oh, I'll make my own dress, or I'll make my own cakes, or I'll make my own this and that. Okay, I've seen it. A lot of them are disasters, unless you have a lot of help. That's okay. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I can't remember why I stopped doing it. Oh, because I couldn't afford. I guess I couldn't. I just didn't want to spend the money on all the bridal shows, and then you have to constantly advertise whether your business is going to go. and especially with something like that. But I still get the odd phone call, inquiries. They weren't cheap. So anyway, so I continued with my daycare, and I've got some pictures I can show you of my candy buffets. And then, of course, our tragedy happened with my dad, so I had to quit daycare. My mother was living with me 3 months he was in the hospital, and then they weren't doing much anymore for him. The hospital was great. The doctors were great. The second hospital, we didn't listen, and we continued with a different hospital and different doctors and therapists, and it was a miracle, and he made it. Excuse me. And I rambled too much, and then I forget what I was saying. Anyway, so then I took my dad and my mother in and lived with me, and I had to redo things, and then he lived with me for 4 months, and then they retired over to Kelowna. So when he got stable and better, yeah, that wasn't a fun time, man, oh man. So anyway, what was I saying about the businesses? Okay, so I had to stop doing that. Then I continued, and then I had to stop again when he passed away, because I had to go help my mother in Kelowna. So my mind wasn't in it. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. So for the last couple of years, I haven't worked. So I think it's time now that I continue on. And so what I'm going to do is start a new business once again, and I'm going to continue my fairies in a different way. I'm going to just do it a little bit more simplistic, and I found a good way to do it. So I'm getting it all ready, and I'm almost there, and I'll let you know more about that and show you some pictures when I'm done with that. So as for my history, my mom and dad were German. My mother was from Berlin, and my dad was from the Black Forest. And I do speak German. Not so great. My grammar's not too great, but I understand everything. So I could go to Germany and live okay, right? And I'm trying to think. How my mom and dad met. My mom was a dancer. She was a ballet and jazz dancer. And my dad was a musician. Fire eater. Entertainers, that's entertainment. So they met on a train. They didn't know each other. She was knitting something, and he was watching her. He liked her, and he helped her hold her ball of wool or something, I think, help unravel it. And she didn't really care for him too much, and but he wouldn't have it. He just kept bugging to go out with her. So finally she did. And what they did was, while they were on a train, was they were, of course, in the war times, or after war, or pre-war, I can't even remember, and I think pre-war, and they would entertain the soldiers, sort of like what Bob Hope had a troupe, and he used to go with the soldiers to different parts of the States and entertain, and that's what my parents did. And they were married, I don't know, close to 70 years. 70 years? Yeah, maybe more. So they were the love of each other's lives. And my mother really proved it, that when you get married, it's forever, in sickness and in health. She took care of him like no other. I mean, she was old and brittle and older, and she had to lift him and move him, and she's hurt her back now, and she's got a lot of fractures because of all that help that she gave my dad. She'd do it again in a heartbeat, she says. So what was I going to say about, and my grandparents on my mother's side, you're going to laugh, this is where I get my shopping urges. My grandmother was a shopper for a high-end department store in Berlin, and my grandfather was a window dresser, designer, and he of course did the displays in the windows, and he also had to write and print the signs, and in those days they did it from inside, and he knew how to write. backwards, and I learned that trait from him because I didn't even know about that when I was a youngster, and I used to write backwards. I wasn't dyslexic, but I could do it just for fun. I used to do it. My friends used to laugh at me and think it was hilarious, and I can still do it. So that's all my different talents that I have. A woman of all trades. Anyway, I never give up, as you can tell, and I hope I never will. So I hope you enjoyed that little bit of history of my life, and if I remember anything, I'll let you know. Talk to you later, and have a good week. Bye for now.